Hi guys, I'm here in the Wendy's drive-thru. I'm here to wrap up my January and February reads, my thoughts. I'm at Wendy's because I want the Thin Mint Frosty and some fries desperately. Insane way to start my year, but I started 2025 with reading Icebreaker, which wasn't a book I was planning to read. I did have it on my TBR because of obviously the hype. Like that is like, you think of Book Talk book, like that is the Book Talk book. It's either you love it, it's 5 stars, or I feel like it sucks, you hate it, it's crazy. So it was not a priority on my TBR, but if you're on Goodreads, you know that Goodreads sends notifications to enter giveaways so you can win free copies of books that are on your TBR. I had not won one before, and I got an email from Goodreads one day saying you've won a Goodreads giveaway. So obviously I'm very excited. So I click on it, and what do you know that I won other than Icebreaker? Not only that, but it was a special edition of Icebreaker. I'll put the cover here for you. It's actually very pretty, and I kind of felt bad when I won it because I was like, someone who's a stan of Icebreaker, I feel like should have won this book, but it was a random giveaway, so I can't be that mad about it. Also, I've not filmed in this car yet, I don't think. This is my new car. I bought it last July. Hi, can I do a small Thin Mint Frosty and a small fry? Okay, so anyway, Icebreaker was my first read of the year, which was crazy way to start the year. I was actually house sitting at the time, and I think it was like the perfect read for that time because it's cold out, and it was like very lighthearted, and I needed that because I have severe fear of home invasion, so having a light fluffy read while I was staying alone was nice. I actually didn't hate it, and I kind of thought I would because not that I'm a romance snob, but I do feel like I have high-ish standards for a romance. I can see why people don't like it. Like, it's very spice heavy, and there are some scenes that I was like, this is okay, sorry. Thinking of the scenes from that movie made me laugh, and then I had to get my food, so. Also, they didn't give me a straw. So anyway, Icebreaker, I liked it. I think I rated it 4 stars. Let me verify that information. Yeah, I rated it 4 stars, which I was expecting for sure like a 3 or a 2, and I hate that I'm that pessimistic. It's pretty good. I also got a French fry because I love a salty snack with a chocolatey drink. I loved the sports setting. That was my first sports romance, I think. And I also loved like how welcoming the frat what's his name, Nathan, that Nathan is part of, how kind they all were, which is so unrealistic, I feel like. But it was so nice to read about just people who are so loving and welcoming and friendly. Also, like, they were so supportive of each other, and I really respected the language and talks about disordered eating, how there are toxic friendships represented. They talk about those. Our main character goes to therapy and dissects a lot of things, which I don't feel like I've typically seen in books before. So I really enjoyed those parts of the book. I thought their relationship was really healthy for the most part. Those things were all great. There were some cringe parts, I'm not gonna lie to you, but the cringe didn't turn me away from the book as a whole, so that's why I gave it a 4. Overall, I enjoyed it, and I would continue the series. Next, I read Gone Girl, which this rating is kind of controversial because I feel like I rated it what I rated it because I know it's supposed to be good. I knew, for the most part, the twist. I had never seen the movie, but I've seen like clips on social media, so I knew what the twist was. So it wasn't jaw-dropping for me. Like, I feel like that is the experience you're supposed to have when you read the book. I did not personally have that. There were a lot of crazy twists and turns, but I feel like what the twist ends up being isn't all that uncommon nowadays with the amount of thriller content out there. I also appreciated that the author made both of the main characters unlikable, in my opinion, which I read a lot of reviews, and I feel like a lot of the negative reviews are like they're terrible people, which, like, yeah, obviously, because like you can sympathize with her at times and you can sympathize with him at times because they're both exhibit terrible traits. Obviously, one more terrible than the other, but I liked that aspect of it. Like, you can't do that and not be crazy, so I like that the author just ran with that. I rated it 4, but I feel like my personal experience was probably more a 3.5 just because I didn't have that like twist feeling, you know? The movie is like so accurate, it's ridiculous. I feel like a lot of times things get changed, but that movie is like extremely accurate to what happened in the book. Next, I read Done and Dusted because I needed something light and fluffy after that, and that was exactly what I needed. I loved the setting. I love like the Grand Teton area, so like having that picture in my mind the whole time was gorgeous. I loved our main characters. I felt like the guy main character, which I'm sorry I don't remember his name, was different than a lot of main male characters I read before. He was more like reserved and quiet, not like a loud, boisterous, confident archetype that we typically see, or I typically see in the books that I read. So I liked that about him. I liked how supportive he was. There were a couple things about that book that, like Icebreaker, did give me cringe a little bit, and some of them I can't say on the internet. One of them that I can was her older brother got on my nerves a lot toward the end, like a lot. I thought that was like really excessive. It was an easy, quick read. It was exactly what I needed it to be. Again, like the sports aspect of it with her being a horse racer, like I've never read anything like that before, so that was fun. Again, would continue the series. Also, the family was super fun, just having a ranch, all having their own different jobs. Her best friend, Teddy, loved her. Next in January, I read The Favorites, which was my book of the month pick, my very first book of the month pick, thanks to my brother's girlfriend, Angela. She got me a subscription. I loved that book. I rated it 5 stars. It feels like a very solid 5. Not like a 6-star or an infinity star, but a solid 5-star read for me. It's about these like 2 ice skaters. You're following basically their entire career, and it's written documentary style. It feels like you're reading a script of like an HBO Max documentary the whole time, which was super fun and made it super engaging because, like a TV show, they're kind of constantly teasing what's coming up next. And again, another sports, not a kind of a romance. I would just consider it more fiction than anything. A bloodthirsty sport, like female-centered sport, which I really liked that part of the book. I felt like the characters, I literally felt like I was watching a documentary. Like, I felt like I could go on HBO Max and click play and I could watch it play out. Like, that's how real the characters in the story felt to me. And here I am watching ice dancing clips on YouTube. Like, I loved it. It reminded me a lot of Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, just like the drama of it all, but like in sports instead of like Hollywood, you know? Gosh, it felt so real. I loved that book. And then last but not least for January, I read The Coworker. I actually listened to this book on audio and I did not like it. I rated it 3 stars, which for me, there's things that I actively do not like about it to be rating it 3 stars. It's probably one of my least favorite thrillers I've read. The female main character was pretty annoying, I felt like. She was like mean girl vibes. And the like victim of the story, but like our antagonist for our main character, is her coworker. So clearly neurodivergent, but it's not said that way. But her behaviors that she exhibits are characteristically neurodivergent. And so the fact that it's never addressed, she's made out to be weird by everyone else in the book, is villainized a lot, gave me the ick. I really did not enjoy that. I think you can have a neurodivergent antagonist or villain, but it did not work in this book for me. I did think it was like fast paced. I found myself like listening to it whenever I had a few moments, but nothing about it like blew me totally away. I would read more of Freida McFadden, but I wouldn't, if I was telling people to read Freida McFadden, this is not the book I would pick. That's where I'm gonna stop for my January reads. That's everything I read in January. I'm going to do some things with the rest of my day, and I'll probably catch up with you tomorrow and tell you about February. I like how I'm using this fry as a pointer. I feel like that was a good start to the year. A lot of solid reads, but February gets even better, so just you wait. Okay, here we are to wrap up February now. Okay, the first book I technically finished in February. I read mostly in January, but first thing I finished in February was Fourth Wing, which of course, I feel like I'm reading a lot of big name books. Icebreaker, Fourth Wing. If you don't know, Fourth Wing is the super popular fantasy book that has like war college and dragons, and it's like a romantasy, so we have some good romance as well. I was worried I would hate this because I don't read fantasy, and I feel like dragons and stuff like that's hard for me to get behind because it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, you know? But overall, I actually rated it 4 stars. I didn't hate it, which was great. I didn't love it either. I did have some things that annoyed me and that weren't my personal cup of tea, but I did enjoy it, which I feel like is a win. It was a little bit dorky for me just because I'm not a fantasy reader, but it wasn't bad. I did think some parts were fun, like just the idea of being trained to ride a dragon I think was really fun, and getting to know the dragons was cool. And I like the personalities at play, so those parts were fun. I did feel like the middle third really slow for me for a book that's that long. I feel like a lot of the middle of it was like her going to school, doing her classes, being so weak. Like I feel like it was a lot of repeating the same things, but I did think it was overall was fun. The setting was fun. The ending was great. The whole book was like that, or even like a little bit more than like the last 100 pages. Holy cow, that would have been amazing. And then the like very ending, I literally have not been like buzzed by a book like that in a long time, so that was really fun. After Fourth Ring, I read Book Lovers. This was my first book club read that I've done. We had to pick a book that had love in the title, so we read Book Lovers, and it was spectacular. I loved it. It's tied for first with Beach Read. I feel like I almost read Beach Read like a year ago. I feel like it's hard to say, like Beach Read I feel like is like a god tier book, but now reading Book Lovers, so fresh on the mind. I freaking loved it. It might be my new favorite. I loved Charlie Lastra and Nora. I just felt like they were such a unique couple in romance books. I felt like I hadn't really seen anyone that career driven in a romance book before, and I really enjoyed that, like in a corporate way. Like it wasn't just they're driven by their work, but it was very like important work, hard work that they had to be dedicated to. I really like that aspect of it. God, I just love the characters. I loved the little town they were in. I loved her sister. I loved his family. Like it was all so perfect. It was funny. The tension, the banter was spectacular. The only thing, I rated it 5 stars, by the way, that wasn't already clear. The only thing that could have taken it to like the next level is if I read that like in the sun. Like last year when I read Beach Read, I was on vacation and I was like laying out in the front yard in the sun, and it was just like perfect vibes. If I had this, I fear this book would not be matched ever again. Like, the vibes were that good. On to the next book, I read The Silent Patient. The Silent Patient is about a woman who is accused of murdering her husband. Since the crime happened, she's never spoken again, and you're following her like therapist who's trying to get her to speak again. I did not love this. I feel like most people do. I did not. I could not stand the man's perspective we were reading from, and I got the ick like early on about him, and I felt like it was kind of like undeserved, but then it was deserved. It was fast-paced and it kept me reading, but there was just a lot of things I didn't love about it. I felt like things were made complicated to create suspense, but then kind of fell apart and didn't mean anything. Like it felt like nothing was actually happening for most of the book. My main issue with this book is that you can tell this book was written by a man, let's just say that. All of the women in this book are like really specific archetypal women. I just feel like there was no depth to any of their characters. Ew. And I disliked reading from his perspective. I felt like he was so miserable. Ugh, like he needed to go to therapy. He needed so many things. It irritated me so bad. And him being like the savior gave me the biggest ick. Like I gave it 3 because I was being nice. No, I would not recommend that book to anyone. I did think the reveal was pretty shocking. Like that's not what I expected to happen. Having to read from his perspective was so freaking miserable. I couldn't stand it. I think it's well written enough to be a 3, but like personally my enjoyment is like a 2 or a 1 star, but I try to like consider more aspects than just strictly my feelings, you know? After that, I listened to Michelle Obama's book Becoming, which is a long audiobook, okay? It was really good though, don't get me wrong. She's so smart and well-spoken, and in a time when things seemed so grim, it was so refreshing to read from such a smart and informed person's perspective. Like it was truly her life from start to finish, so you learned all of her life lessons along the way, which I think was really cool. It was refreshing to read about a presidency that truly cared about its people. Like you could see how and hear how invested her and Barack were and how much they just cared about people, you know? I also just loved hearing their personal lives before their whole world became politics. Like, I was very young when Obama was elected. I think it was in 5th grade. And so I don't remember the like campaigning part of it and how much of like nobodies they were. Like, I feel like politics now is like an old man in the fight kind of game. Like, they were not that, and I just think that story is really cool. And then I also liked that the book really ended on a note of positivity. Overall, I rated this 4 stars. There wasn't necessarily like I didn't think anything was wrong with it, but I think it's hard for me to rate nonfiction a 5 unless it's like a really transformative for me. Then I read Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which I read in my Snow Day reading vlog. If you really want me to like dive into it, you can go there. Rated this 4 stars, but like looking back, I don't know. I never have a hard time reading books, and I feel like books this month were like not a solid 3 or a solid 4. Like, there was a lot of like nuance to it, which I don't normally have. And I think my opinions about the movie really infused my opinion of the book, but I liked a lot of things about it. I love Bernadette and her daughter. I love the way it was written through like interviews and news clippings and emails and such, and I just loved the story. But then there were also things I couldn't stand about it, like her husband. Boo. Could not stand him. I hated that they stayed together. It made me so mad. I also think there were some like outdated jokes in language that I personally did not vibe with, but all of that, not part of the movie. Recommend the movie. I love how intelligent they were, how smart the women were, how this was a very female oriented story. Like, I needed that this month, so I appreciated it for that. Overall, I rated it 4. 4 is a stretch for sure. It's probably a good solid 3.5 though. Then I read Killjoy. Again, read this in the Snow vlog. This is a prequel to the A Girl's Guide to Murder series, and if you haven't read that, what are you doing? Go read that. It was a fun and cute novella. It was very short and easy to read, and it definitely was a good setup for the series. I think I rated it 4 stars. It really gave us an insight into Pip's intuition, which is the main character in the series, so I enjoyed that about it. And then lastly, for February, I read First Time Caller, which also, again, in the Snow vlog, if you want deep dive. That book was so good. It was my book of the month pick. I thought it was so freaking good. The writing was on par with Emily Henry, just like the way the characters in the world felt so fleshed out and real. I loved the main character so much, especially Lucy. I just thought she was such an interesting leading lady. And their supporting cast, like the people who worked at the radio station and her family, like just so interesting. If you didn't know already, First Time Caller is a Sleepless in Seattle retelling, but it's like gender swapped. Super fun. My issue that brought it down from a 5 to a 4.25 was that Aiden, the leading guy, I really liked him for most of the book, but the last little bit, I felt like he was like really doubling down on some bad habits, and I felt like he needed a therapist. Okay, he needed a therapist to like sort out his issues, and things would have been so much better. And of course, everyone has their flaws. Like, I wasn't expecting him to be perfect, but I felt like it went on too long. And then I also didn't like that there was like, you know, the 3rd act breakup thing, but it was like super late in the book. Like, it almost felt like, you know, they broke up, got back together, and then happy ever after very fast. And I like to sit in that more. Not that I want the breakup to be long, but just work through the resolution, then get to the happy ending, you know? So I didn't like that about it, but the rest of it was so good. The banter, fantastic. Again, if you want more like live reactions to that, they're in the Snow vlog. That is all my reads for January and February. I think my favorite read of January was probably The Favorites or Done and Dusted. I've thought about both of those books a lot since then. The Favorites was definitely the most well written one that I read, and I do think about it as like a movie I watched or something, like, or a documentary. Like, I feel like I lived through that. And then Done and Dusted, I think about the setting a lot, and so I think about them a lot. And then for February, Book Lovers was hands down my favorite for February. I feel like that's gonna be a romance that's hard to top this year, but I have some ideas for things that might be able to get there, you know? So yeah, those are all of my January and February reads. I think next month I want to do like a little more stats to see what that would look like. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you read any of these books and what you thought about them. I feel like some of those opinions that I had, like The Silent Patient and Fourth Wing, I feel like those were kind of unpopular opinions. So let me know what you think, and which book are you adding to your TBR? What should I add to my TBR? Some new questions for you. Anyways, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.